Thank you, Felisa. And now, last but not least, regarding the global perspective of things, I'd like to welcome Jeremy Weber, Director of Christianity Today.
Hello, everyone. It's always a challenge to go last at the end of a long day. So if you fall asleep, I won't take it personally. And also, given the lighting in here, I won't ever know. Also, forgive me, I need to click both the button and my screen. All right. I'm Jeremy Weber with CT, based in Chicago. It's an honor to be speaking here at the 6th Christian Media Summit with 120 delegates from 18 countries. It's also great to be back in Jerusalem, such a remarkable mix of ancient and modern, sacred and secular. Case in point, this photo is of the very first time I came to Jerusalem. I was invited to spend the night inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a rare opportunity to intimately experience such a famous place of pilgrimage. Now, a show of hands, has anyone else done this? Anyone else spent the night in the Holy Sepulchre? Well, I have to be honest, I was conflicted. My wife and I are avid Argentine tango dancers. I've danced in a dozen countries. Jerusalem has only one tango party a month, and it was the same night as my invitation. So I'll leave it to you to guess how I chose to spend the evening. Any guesses? Of course, I chose the church. You have a little faith. So regarding Israel in 2050, you've just heard a humanitarian perspective, a female perspective, and a media perspective. I've been asked to offer a global perspective, so the easiest of the four to summarize in just 10 minutes. A bit of info about my vantage point. I've worked at CT for 15 years. I currently direct our expanding non-US and non-English content. Our global media ministry was founded by American evangelist Billy Graham in 1956 to serve Christian thought leaders worldwide. We are best known for a monthly magazine, a daily website, and recently a viral podcast that charted in dozens of nations. Today, a full third of our readers are outside the U.S., and we now publish regularly in 6 languages and are testing more. For those of you observing the liturgical season of Advent, we offer a daily devotional which you can read for free in 8 languages. In recent years, I've attended dozens of global gatherings of Christian leaders, most recently one with 500 evangelical theological educators from 80 nations, representing 200 theological programs. I've personally spoken with hundreds of Christian leaders worldwide and produced thousands of articles that attempt to capture their views on current events. The experience has been a profound encouragement for me and my personal faith, particularly during a season of such polarization in the American church. It's also taught me to have humility when claiming any singular view for the body of Christ worldwide. Last night, Rabbi David Rosen cited the expression, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, and he said it likely applies to Christians as well. After 15 years at CT, I can resoundingly confirm he is right. So, 2050, what will the relationship between Israel and Christians worldwide look like? Last night, Dr. Buehler of ICEJ mentioned his joy at the upcoming 75th anniversary, noting it is the same age as when Abraham went to Canaan. In 2050, Israel will be over 100, the age when Abraham became father to Isaac. What offspring might the Abraham Accords have produced by then? Now we know the Lord told Jeremiah, "For I know the plans I have for you." And sorry to disappoint, but I'm not a modern prophet. I'm just a journalist, though many of my brethren on Twitter seem to think that they're one and the same. So what I have to offer are a few humble observations of global trends and a few avenues of common cause that Israel could use to stay close to the global Christian community as it diversifies. First, a few qualifications. I will mostly speak from the perspective of a evangelical Protestant Christian. CT is a centered set, not a bounded set. And so while we have a diverse readership, which includes many Catholic and Orthodox readers, as well as many mainline and charismatic readers, I'm conversant in their issues. I read their media regularly. The vantage point I can best offer is a evangelical one from the middle of the Protestant spectrum. I also qualify to speak for myself in my personal capacity and not officially as CT. So 5 brief observations of global trends and how they impact Israel and Christians. Number one, obvious changing demographics. Most of us know this, but it bears repeating. Christianity has dramatically shifted from the global north to the global south, now accounting for every 2 in 3 Christians, and from a majority white faith to a majority non-white faith, now accounting for 4 in 5 Christians. Its largest language is now Spanish, followed by English, then Portuguese, and very soon Chinese. Evangelicalism itself, which is on this slide, and I know this is a bit small, so I'm happy to provide this to anyone afterwards. Just come get my card. Evangelicalism itself is now almost a majority African faith, as shown here by the Center for the Study of Global Christianity. Research also shows that fertility has bigger impact than conversion. The Pew Research Center predicts by 2060 that Muslims will increase most in births and percentage, nearly equally Christians, while Jews will increase but will remain the same percentage of the global population. This all means the need will be greater than ever for Israel to engage Christians beyond American evangelicals, and for Christians to improve their literacy of Islam and their engagement with Muslims, which they can learn much about from Israel and the wider region. Number 2, changing political contexts. While secularism is on the rise globally, at the same time so is religious nationalism. Think India, for example. Meanwhile, and often related, government restrictions and societal hostilities towards religion have hit record highs in recent years. The Pew Research Center calculates that Christians were harassed in 155 nations in 2020, up from 107 in 2007. Muslims were harassed in 145 nations, up from 96. And Jews were harassed in 94 nations, up from 51. This constrains the activities of believers in private and in the public square, including their engagement with Israel when it diverges from local foreign policy or the local mood on the street. Number 3, changing generations. The situation today, broadly speaking, most Christians who are older, white, and more Western remain solidly pro-Israel, due both to theological interpretations, partly because the perception of how to change the world in past decades was to support democracy and free markets, and Israel was a prime example of that. It's remarkable how far this country has come in such a short time, and many see this as a sign of God's providential and restorative work in history. Meanwhile, many Christians who are younger, Christians of color, less Western, are less supportive of Israel, or even unsupportive, partly because of declining religious literacy, and partly because, as anyone who has visited a college campus recently knows, the way to change the world today is social justice, to fight inequalities of power and wealth, to take the side of the marginalized and the oppressed. Thus, a corollary of Israel's remarkable ascendancy in such a short time is fewer now think of its past challenges and more think of its present-day treatment of its minorities, and this complicates their support. Now, as Bishop Robert Stern said last night of evangelical Christianity, whatever that is, it's up for grabs in today's world. I believe is his exact quote. When it comes to U.S. evangelicals, definitions do vary, but the best surveys put them at a full quarter of the U.S. population, meaning there are more liberal evangelicals than American Jews, and consistently find that a third are now people of color. Going global, where 4 in 5 evangelicals are of color, and where many live as minorities, often marginalized or oppressed, their views of Israel become even more complicated. Israel will be wise to ensure that it's not overly focused on American evangelicals as a barometer for evangelical attitudes worldwide. Number 4, changing affiliations. Much attention has been paid to the rise of the nones, the religiously unaffiliated, soon to be a plurality of Americans. Less attention has been paid to the rise of the non-denominational, now a majority of U.S. Protestants. This complicates the efforts of Israel, or anyone, including me, to widely engage the Christian church because the authority structures and the information pathways keep fragmenting. Another noteworthy change in the Christian world is the significant switch from Catholicism to Protestantism in Latin America, where 3 countries now have Protestant majorities, a few others are close, and even Brazil is projected to follow suit by 2030. Now, evangelicos is a catch-all term for Protestant, and not all are classic quote-unquote evangelicals. But the remarkable surge of Latino charismatics, most of whom are Zionists, has increased regional support for Israel, as shown by Guatemala becoming the first nation after the U.S. to move its embassy to Jerusalem. Yet there also still remains a strong current of liberation theology on the continent, which still requires engagement by Israel as it explains and continues to improve its policies. The 5th one, changing beliefs. The foundation of Christian support for Israel has been changing, as dispensationalism and biblical literacy itself both continue to wane. In a 2021 survey of the theological beliefs of U.S. evangelicals towards Israel, Gray Matter Research created this thought-provoking chart. Essentially, it shows a remarkable split both between who still sees the Jews as God's chosen people today, but also the saliency of supporting them versus other charitable causes. So they found that 31% both see the Jews as God's chosen people and put a high priority on supporting them from a charitable standpoint. 20% do see them as God's chosen people, but do not put a high priority given other charitable causes. 17% do not believe they're chosen, but still put a high priority on supporting them. And 32% do not believe the Jews are God's chosen and do not put a high priority on supporting them. So a complicated landscape to engage. For a global landscape, it gets even trickier. I mean, research has shown that American evangelicals and Christians within Israel are different enough. In 2010, one of the most globally representative gatherings of evangelicals ever took place in Cape Town, South Africa, when 4,000 leaders from 198 nations gathered for the third Congress of the Lausanne Movement. The Pew Research Center happened to survey the attendees and found that more leaders said they sympathized with Israel than Palestinians, 34% versus 11%. But a small majority sympathized either with both equally, 39%, or with neither, 13%. We'll have to wait until September 2024, when Lausanne will hold its fourth Global Congress in Korea, a planned 5,000 leaders from 200-plus nations, to see how those numbers have changed. But while Israel has found ways to receive the support of American evangelicals, today both the motivation and the saliency continue to change, particularly globally, and this requires constant adaptation. Now, 4 broad avenues of common cause for Israel and Christians. Number 1, combating anti-Semitism. Speakers here have rightly bemoaned the rise in anti-Semitism, which has been documented by many observers. I'm confident, looking at our core audience, you won't find many championing such beliefs, and I do see interesting examples of evangelical coalitions forming. Yet, in much of American evangelicalism, there's often a lack of historical consciousness, often almost as if the history of Christianity began with Billy Graham. As our CEO sometimes joke, it's like we went from the Acts of the Apostles straight to the Acts of Billy. We simply haven't viewed ourselves as inheritors of the European tradition of anti-Semitism within Christian circles, because we don't feel historically connected to the European forms of Christianity, even though we certainly are. Thankfully, our concern for anti-Semitism and our efforts to jointly address it are growing, especially in Europe. But I can also say, having observed evangelical debates in the region over some of the more recent efforts to define the problem and unite against it, such as the IHRA definition, that's important to distinguish anti-Semitism from criticism of Israel as a nation-state, as well as to allow for groups to draft their own statements opposing it that address their constituents and their local contexts versus expecting everyone to sign on to the same declarations. The second cause, international religious freedom, known over this part of the world as freedom of religion and belief, FORB. I had the privilege of being a delegate to the first 2 IRF ministerials at the U.S. State Department as an attendee of the 2 IRF summits carried on by civil society. The next one's end of January in D.C., right before our National Prayer Breakfast. And I encourage you to attend if you want to see an exhilarating multi-faith mix of clergy and civil society. Everyone's a minority somewhere, and persecution and restrictions and social tensions are increasing. We need to stand up for each other, both far away, such as the persecution of Uyghur Muslims in China or of Christians in India, as well as for the freedoms of religious minorities in our own nations. Both of our nations have good records on religious freedom, but we can always improve. A third area of common cause is refugees. Not to intrude on the humanitarian turf of Mike Evans, who spoke before me, but there are currently a record number of forcibly displaced persons worldwide, more than 100 million, according to the UN. I personally visited camps in Iraq, South Sudan, and Somalia, among other nations, and can testify to this tragedy. I've collaborated on the evacuation of religious minorities from Afghanistan and witnessed the mobilization of European churches to receive Ukrainians fleeing war. In the U.S., 6 of our 9 resettlement agencies are faith-based, with the Jewish, evangelical, Catholic, and mainline communities represented, and they account for 70% of resettlement. I've been very impressed with the vast sums of the American Jewish community has raised and donated toward Ukraine, as well as with Israel receiving tens of thousands of Ukrainians. May both of our nations and our faiths continue to better welcome the stranger. And then the fourth one is journalism. To intrude on the turf of Felicia, who spoke before me, on the media perspective. And I guess as the fourth and final speaker, I can take the opportunity to play cleanup. I believe that independent, credible, thoughtful journalism on religion is needed now more than ever. In today's sea of misinformation and lack of media literacy and religious literacy, where everyone is information saturated, time starved, we need to understand each other better, particularly to understand the true motivations of others in their own words, not the straw man arguments presented to us in social media that reward hyperbole and stereotyping and stoke fear and anger. For example, this slide behind me is a internal Facebook study of the top Christian pages on Facebook during a particular time period, and 19 of the 21 were troll farms based in the Balkans. I would even argue that journalism itself is a very biblical profession. If you study it at an evangelical college, you're likely to encounter the idea of the Apostle Luke, author of the book of Acts in the New Testament, as the first journalist, in his effort to write an orderly account of what eyewitnesses had seen and done. Then there's this famous journalism joke: if your mother loves you, check it out. As I-24's Frank Malul said Sunday, it takes a multinational, multilingual, multi-faith media based locally to tell the full story. Our nonprofit media ministry is attempting to transform itself along similar lines to become more of a central nervous system that represents the global body with colleagues from every part of the body, starting with a four-person team in Asia, and Lord willing, expanding to the Middle East next year. All of us can focus on journalistic integrity, covering both sides of an issue accurately and fairly. We can also highlight as many encouraging case studies as we can find. For example, and I apologize, I forgot to pull some slides for these groups, but I can connect you later. One group I really respect is the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network, convened by an American evangelical pastor, an imam, and a rabbi. They've hosted dozens of retreats around the world where pastors, imams, and rabbis develop relational bonds. I witnessed this in person in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, along with another innovative effort by the Institute for Global Engagement and the Templeton Religion Trust to promote cross-cultural religious literacy among government and civil society. This has been bearing fruit in Vietnam and soon in Indonesia and in Ghana. Meanwhile, the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation just hosted a noteworthy Faith at Work conference in Silicon Valley, providing a place for the rapidly growing employee resource groups focused on faith, which have gained C-suite acceptance for Jews and evangelicals alike to bring their whole self to work in such a secular, liberal environment. We can also listen more locally. That's one reason why at CT we often represent two relatively small demographic groups in Israel, Palestinian evangelicals and Messianic Jews. They're the closest to our core audience's theology and the closest of our audience to the land. Now, these are two groups with vastly different understandings of Israel. They're not often united, but both deserve our hearing of their views in their own words, and allowing their voices to circulate as widely as much larger demographic groups serves the church. We're also working to give equal voice to the MENA region's Arab seminaries, churches, and ministries, as we do American ones, including the forthcoming Arabic initiative. I know I've been blessed by greater access to these leaders, and we expect that our readers will be likewise. Finally, as Bishop Stern said last night, today we have a tension between social justice Jesus and Trump Jesus, while the Christian world needs to meet the Jewish Jesus in his context. And last night, Rabbi Rosen requested that we Christian media not see the state of Israel and the Jewish people as demigods or as inerrant, but to honor their humanity, to praise when praise is warranted, and to criticize when criticism is warranted. As he said, true friends do not say everything you do is right, caution you when you do wrong. This is a true expression of love. Knowing when to do which, when we cover Israel as Christian media, is a matter of much thought and prayer, particularly from afar. But may we do both well, recalling the words of the prophet Micah. He has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of thee, to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Thank you.